Hey everyone, welcome. These are my two passions in life. That started first. No, that started first. And then that came later, yoga and basketball. And here I am. So I'm going to just go over what I went over with the BEM class today. So it's the document entitled Email Transition to the Niyamas. So this is from an email I had last semester from a student. So the first paragraph and the last paragraph are the email, and then in between are my comments. So this is in the Aparigraha week. So she wrote, I think it was she, but I'm not sure. But that is the pronoun I will use. So at the top it says, I thought praise played a role in encouraging me to be more immersed in something. When I approached from a yoga perspective while reading the Aparigraha material this time, I realized that I was using praise in the wrong direction because I was obsessed with collecting compliments. So I was depressed and compared myself to others on days when I didn't get any praise. So I felt great satisfaction and mental poverty by feeling joy and sorrow in other people's words. So I wrote here, being obsessed with compliments. So imagine yourself as a battery. So those compliments really get you charged, but then that depletes. It goes away quickly. It's like foam on soda or beer. If you pour it, there's lots of foam in beer, but it goes away, and then you're left with less than 100%. So it says, being obsessed with something like this is evidence of weak faith in myself. And faith is just lack of confidence. And that's coming. This is what the next couple of niyamas talk about. So I wrote here, it's not a weak faith in yourself. This is the comment on the side, if you can read that. It's just not quite knowing who you are yet. You haven't solidified yourself, which is why self-doubt arises. It's there, but things get in the way of that confidence rising up and manifesting. So the foundation needs to be stronger and less brittle, less fragile. Like cement. Cement needs time to solidify after you pour it. And that's who you are. Deep down, you're solid as a rock, evolving and unyielding. And this is what leads into purity and clarity, the first niyama. Yeah, so the example is, we've all felt this. Students have written about this recently. I thought it was kind of funny because it's universal. You text someone, or you wait, and then you're waiting for a reply, and if they don't reply in the expected time, then you start to worry and get nervous. What happened? Do they blah blah blah? All these negative thoughts come in, and then like an hour later, the text comes back. Oh, okay, it's problem, no problem, everything's fine. You had this insecurity and lack of confidence, and you worry too much, and it's all nothing. It's just a complete waste of time and especially energy, right? So we all do that, right? And that's what we try to limit and reduce and hopefully eliminate, but we're human, so it's probably never going to be completely gone. So next, it says a perfect transition into the niyamas. So the readings on the first two niyamas this week and next week deal with this. So what she's describing is using the yamas to remove negative, non-beneficial behaviors and thought patterns. So after you do that, after you get rid of the lying and the stealing and the misuse of energy and being violent to yourself, all the negative stuff, being greedy, then what? Well, that's where purity and clarity, the first Shaucha, are called Shaucha. That's where the first niyama. That's why it's first, for a reason. So basically, you're asking yourself these three questions. So what do I want? Why am I doing this? And is it good for me? Right? These are things that you constantly ask yourself. It's a lifelong process, but the more conscious you are of this, the more you can deep down understand yourself. And so when your intentions are clear and good, this helps purify yourself. This is how you define yourself. This is how you become you, right? One second. I told you, 1 second. So next, it says contentment and confidence are two sides of the same coin. So there's a link there to that expression. That means it's the same thing, but two different ways of looking at it. Two sides of the same coin. So knowing the answers to these existential questions is what truly makes you happy. And this is contentment. This is the next one, Santosha. And this builds on the foundation, or I wrote the scaffolding of Shaucha and purity and clarity. So you don't have real contentment until your purpose and clarity are defined. So in other words, how can you be content or happy if you're doing something that you don't really want to do? That's really what it kind of boils down to. So once it's established, that purity, that clarity, once that's established and defined, it'll be easier for other people to know who you really are. Because then there's a real, if you have a strong sense of self, then people can know there's something there to know, right? Something exists. It's not kind of like, well, I'm not sure what he thinks or how she is. But then if you're kind of definite, there's a strong foundation, people can see that and know you. And there's an expression, something about, I can't remember, like, what is it? Like when you find your own path, you may lose friends, but the ones that you keep will be your real friends. Something like that, and that really is true as you go through life. Take it from me and my experience, but it is true. Yeah, so again, that gives you the real confidence to face things with less fear and doubt because you know what you're doing, your intention is pure. And then soon, what used to occupy a lot of mental space, like I was talking about before, worrying about the response to your text or email, right? Then you realize that's just a waste of energy. So that just goes away. And then that mental space and energy can be used for better things, more important things. So second page, yoga simplifies. So this is what I meant about yoga making your life less complicated, less stressful. Letting go of these things doesn't just happen, right? It takes mental engagement, mental effort. And that's exactly what you're doing even when you ask, and especially when you answer these questions, right? Who am I? Why am I doing this? Is it good for me? Etc. Next, it says WIIV. That stands for wisdom, intuition, insight, vision. So the more stillness, and that means quiet, calm, peace, the more you bring that into your life, that the more that your intuition and your wisdom and your vision and your insight, the more those things will manifest. They come about, right? They're there, but they're blocked. Your energy is not really fueling them like they could be. So this stillness, it allows you to hear your energy body, to feel that. So the energy waves become less pronounced, less fluctuations, and they become more like just ripples, right? As that stillness grows within you and that calm, that sense of control. So your increased sensitivity, that corresponds with WIIV, that gives you an inner courtroom where you are the judge. Think of it that way, right? Because it becomes your dominant inner voice. So you trust this voice. It becomes stronger because you grow confident that it's right because it was right in the past and it's kind of you, right? So you become the judge and you become the inner voice becomes stronger and stronger, and you trust the inner voice because it was right the last time and it's growing stronger, so it becomes a kind of a reinforcing circle, if you will. Yeah, so the more energy you generate, the more you feed the higher chakras and the higher levels of consciousness. So we don't really talk about this, but there's a link here and it shows the energy centers, the chakras. And the sixth one here is the third eye. And you see people in India, they often have a red dot here, and that signifies the third eye. And that's the chakra that has the higher levels of consciousness, of wisdom, intuition, vision, etc. So as your energy rises, it fuels these energy centers like your heart and your third eye, and then the top chakra, which basically is where the universal energy comes in, right? Your energy rises Whereas if your energy is down in the lower chakras, that's where fear, insecurity, all these different things that keep you down. So you want to have your energy always rising. That's what sattva is all about. Anyway, that's not on the test, the chakras, but that's good to know, just the general concept. So, next paragraph, second to last. Yeah, so the ability to feel whether other people's words have sincerity in them becomes more innate. So innate means something that exists from birth. Like, there's an example of a child's natural desire to help her friends when they're in trouble, right? So without realizing it, you will know whether someone or something is good for you just by your energy body. Like you'll just feel this is right or this is not right. So think of this sensitivity and the resulting judgment as your spidey senses, like Spider-Man. And there's a definition of Spider-Man here on the side, right? He kind of knows, he can just feel, his intuition is so strong, he can feel if something is right or not, even before it happens, right? If there's danger, even before it happens, you kind of know it's coming. I have this feeling sometimes, it's funny, when I ride my bike a lot, and there's been a few times where I've been riding along and I think, wait a minute, okay, I better start paying a little more attention to safety because just for some reason, and then I swear, within a few minutes, I see someone fall down nearby me, or just last week, I came to two small streets and there was a truck blocking my view to the left. And I just had this feeling a minute or two before, and so I kind of slowed down, and sure enough, an electric bicycle came this way, and it made zero sound. Like a bicycle, I can usually hear at least a little bit, but it made no sound. And if I wasn't even really careful on looking, it could have ran into it, or he could have ran into me. So, yeah, I know it from experience. This definitely happens. I've become more sensitive, much more aware of things, which really, that's what life should be. It makes life more interesting if you can see things and feel things more deeply, right? Okay, so the last paragraph. So this is the second part of that email that we started with at the top of this document. She says, when I only look at yoga as an exercise, meaningless greed, such as you have to meet the teacher's expectations, sometimes tries to appear suddenly, right? Those thoughts pop into her head. These days, I do yoga with a focus on the spirit pursued by it as much as the pose itself. So again, spirit in this is really energy, right? So focusing as much on the energy in the pose as just the actual physical movement itself. So then, when she does that, I don't feel any lack or longing mentally. I'm trying to get rid of my obsessions and be less constrained from competition, held back. That's not holding me back anymore, this competition on the mat because of yoga practice and training. All right, so that's basically all we did in class, and then we'll do this next week. We will talk about, there's a handout that'll be up with all the commands, the imperatives, the verbs, which are used for giving directions, commands. Also, when there's a sense of urgency or even anger, like stop doing that, put that down. But when yoga, all these commands that you've heard about, bring your feet together, point your toes, push through the heels. The verb comes first because that's a command, and that's called the imperative form, which you probably already know from all your wonderful time in Hagwon preparing for Sunum test. Okay, so there's this. So again, what I just read, that just kind of is preparing you to take us into the Niyamas. So the first one is Shaucha, or purity and clarity. So that document is up. This one I just read from is up, but this is just kind of a FYI. And then the other thing this week, so purity, the first niyama, and then the imperatives. And then we'll do this in class. We did this today where I will give you a couple of paragraphs about the instructions for a pose, and you'll have to work together with a partner to fill in the blanks of the commands, just to kind of practice this. And as I explained in class today, so this mimics, like giving you these commands list of commands and verbs now in the middle of the course, this mimics the natural learning process. So instead of giving you this in week 1 and then going through the class, this mimics the natural process where when you're a little baby, you hear things first. It's called a silent period. You hear lots of things, and then finally you can repeat them back. Say, "Oma, 밥 주세요," like that. Anyway, so you've heard most of all these words, right? You've heard this, you've read this, but now you see a list, and now this should be more familiar to you, right? It's not totally new information. So that's the theory behind that. And I told a story about I met in Shanghai about 5 years ago. I met this short, balding American guy, white guy, and what are you doing in Shanghai? He was the translator, the Chinese English translator in 2008 Beijing Olympics for the USA, the Dream Team, the basketball team, like all the NBA stars. LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Kobe Bryant, Kevin Durant. You probably know those names. Those guys all came 2 weeks or so in China. They won the gold medal. This guy was with the team all day translating. When they went to the Great Wall of China, etc., this guy was translating for these guys. Like, what? That was your job? Anyway, so he knows how to learn languages, right? And he said the biggest mistake people make learning Chinese, foreigners that want to learn Chinese, is right away they start studying and trying to write the characters. He said that's useless. That should probably be the last thing you do. So the first thing you have to do with any language, and especially Chinese, is the tones. There's 4 tones, right? So he said you got to spend time, a few months, just until you can hear the difference, just listening to tapes, etc., until you can start to distinguish between the 4 tones. And once you do that, it's the same thing with the silent period, right? You're silent, but you're listening, you're absorbing, and then you can start to repeat back what you hear, and then you can attach meaning to it and put it together. And then the last thing you should do is to write the characters, because as a foreigner, mostly you need to speak it, and the characters, as you know, much more than me about Chinese characters. Those are like spider webs. Anyway, that's it. That is the blah 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 for this is week 10. Okay, so imperatives. We'll do an exercise in class next week, and read about the first niyama, and do your journals. I'll have them corrected for you next time, and I'll have the midterms returned to you as well. So journals with 3 pictures is all you need to do, and read the materials, and stay healthy. I'll see you next week. Happy Children's Day!